I really appreciate this. Is a topic that we don't talk about enough in first responders.
Hmm.
You know, everybody goes from call to call, and the culture is very much almost like survival mode. You just want to get through the shift. And so
Hmm.
in any kind of long-term thinking really goes out the window. And so, you know, the expression people are living hand to mouth, that's kind of like what we do. Like, you just need food, you need it right now because you don't know what you're going to get for the rest of the shift. So people run to the fast food. And I don't think that, I'm not saying that that has to be the case, right? So like in your in your paper you wrote about meal prepping and planning. So I thought maybe we could talk about that and maybe talk about what that looks like.
Okay. Yeah, I think it is a unique situation for sure. And, the type of people that go into this line of work are awesome and probably not thinking about themselves a lot.
Right. That, that's true. And there's also, from a mental health perspective, self-care feels really selfish. It's
Yes.
so, yeah, you're right. People think about everyone else.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard to know where to fit yourself in, I'm sure. And then with the schedules, I can't imagine. But knowing that it's so important, I think is the first thing, is some education and just letting them know that yes, it's so important for you to take care of yourself so you can be strong and have the stamina to save other people's lives. That's what they're doing. So
Yeah.
you know they do really need to put themselves first so they can react and get through their shift like they started their shift.
Yeah. Something that in my notes after reading your article, it surprised me. Drink half your body weight in ounces every day. I had never heard that before.
And that really is, and that's different for everybody because everybody's a different weight. So we all have different fluid needs, but that's kind of a starting place. And that might be, I would assume that some people working these long hours, especially with their uniform on and having a lot of exertion during certain times of their day, um, they might actually need a lot more, but that's probably the minimum.
Yeah, I really appreciated that you also included in that what it looks like during fire suppression activities.
Which is totally different. And no, and people do not really, you have to show up prepared, meaning in that case, hydrated. You don't want to go into it dehydrated. You want to start ahead. And you are losing so much. You're also losing a lot of electrolytes after a certain amount of time. So you need to not only replace water or fluid, but you also have to have some sodium and electrolytes as well. Um, Very important. And the things that you wouldn't want to do at that time would be high caffeine, high sugar, carbonation, energy drinks. They can make it more difficult to get the hydration in.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned both of those things. So the coffee pot is always on at the fire
Mhm.
station. You could go there at 3 in the morning, it's probably on. We drink that by the bucket. And then in between that, and I'm guilty of it myself, energy drinks. And it goes back to that being in survival mode. I
Yes.
know on a certain level, this is not the answer, right? It's not healthy. But to keep sharp, to
Mhm.
be alert, I do that when I feel really run down. And but then you feel even worse later, because when that stuff starts to wear off, you pay a price for it, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that you do react to what you need immediately, but it also can cause a few hours later for you to feel much worse. So you do want to try to really ultimately is getting into the habit of doing what works for you. So if you're realizing on a daily basis you're doing something, but a few hours you're feeling worse, that's not working. So really
Yeah.
trying to figure out, and everybody's different, you want to try to do what works for you, but some people drink a cup of coffee and instead of getting the an instant energy they need, they get jittery, and then that's not really helping. It's
Right.
actually making it worse. Where what they might have needed was maybe a brisk walk, or maybe just drinking a tall glass of water with some lemon. I know that's not as exciting, but long term that might be actually helping them. But in trying to think of it as self-care and not denying themselves.
Yes.
So trying to
Right.
it's about figuring out what's going to work for you. Drinking too much caffeine might make it difficult for you to sleep that night. Ultimately, that's going to make the next day worse. So
That's
it can be a vicious cycle when you kind of get into those habits.
Yeah, you're right. I was thinking yesterday about our conversation, and what struck me about noontime yesterday was how incredibly tired I was, but it was the first day off after doing 4 10-hour shifts, back to back. That first day off is really not pretty. And and I had a lot of activities going on with family and friends. And honestly, Laura, I couldn't string two sentences together. I just wanted to hibernate because everything was off. I could feel it. My blood sugar was probably way off. My days and nights are screwed up.
Yes, yes.
Sleep completely screwed up. And I don't like operating at that level. It just can't, it's not good.
No, it isn't good. And I think at that point you need to figure out. Unfortunately, I think people do a lot of things that are unhealthy because they feel awful and they're tired and they are stressed out. Even myself, I know if I am stressed out, I might um, eat a whole bunch of things just because I'm stressed out, and then I'm miserable after that. If it's not the right kinds of things. Um, Really trying to think about what's going to make you feel better later. Maybe you just need lots of extra fluid in the morning. Maybe you need to get outside in the sun in the morning so you can sleep better that next day. Um, and just trying to think of ways that you can help yourself feel better without sabotaging your health.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. Being outdoors is very helpful. You're right. I sleep better. A lot of my friends and colleagues at work try to do things together outdoors. Our our unit at work at the police department has we kayak. Um, it's low impact. It's not like anything that's you know all that strenuous, but just being out in the fresh air and being able to enjoy some sunshine,
Mhm.
it works wonders. We also have a lot of beautiful hiking trails,
Mm.
and we've done that as a group. And you're right. I mean, I know I sleep better on days when I'm outdoors more. And it's different too. Like I've noticed, having worked in the EMS and fire and now with a police unit, the cultures are a little different and self-care looks a little different. The people in EMS spend just hours on end inside an ambulance, and eating, exercising is incredibly challenging. They run so many calls. Whereas in the fire department, there's usually a weight room. There's a kitchen where people can do, you know, meal prepping is probably easier in the fire station. And in the police station, at least in Athens, they do have a kitchen, refrigerator, a way to meal prep and store food. But I think maybe one of the keys is to be creative, right? And maybe it's bringing an ice chest of food and putting that in the front of the ambulance or something.
Oh, right, for the EMS. Oh, yes, that's challenging. Yes, but any pre-thought,
Yeah.
meaning, planning ahead, that is a very difficult shift, I'm sure, because they don't probably have a lot of time.
Right.
I'm assuming they're constantly going. So, my thoughts would be healthy mini meals, like literally, and not snacks, because when I think about snacks, I'm thinking, chips and things like that. But having half sandwiches available, having fresh fruit, maybe some baggies with trail mix. Have opportunities to have the good healthy foods throughout the day, maybe on their drive to the next spot. Lots of water, lots of and of course that would take some planning ahead, and having those quick easy things available. They might do it in an individual level. Maybe they just pack a bag, a book bag, or something with some foods that don't have to be refrigerated, or maybe they do bring a small cooler with couple sandwich baggies full of things that they can eat, because when they don't have time, it's easy to eat things that are just there, meaning it could be fast food, it could be a vending machine, it could be maybe they just get a Coke at the gas station because that's all they can do. But yes, kind of just pre-thinking, planning. I can remember, leaving with the kids when they were younger. We would leave the house early in the day, and my neighbors would be like, "Where are you going?" And like, "We'll be back tonight." But we had, we had so many bags of things. But they were going to school, and then right after school, we were going to the football field, or we weren't going to be able to eat at home. So, I had, all sorts of things with me, looking like we were leaving for a week, but we were just really, just trying to get through the day. But it was planning ahead, and it was easy, easy things, not cooking them, just having, peanut butter and jelly on whole wheat bread, having that on their way home from school in the car, and cheese sticks, lots of fruits, cut up apples, things that were easy to eat, but it was a way that they could still get their, fruits and vegetables in, even though we were eating in the car.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I had never thought about some of those food groups that you mentioned, and also having like half meals prepared, because in between calls, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have time to sit down and have a meal, but they may be able to, have a half a sandwich that's pre-thought, put some thought in, maybe grab some apple slices before their next call. And of course, you know, every person's situation would be different, but that might be a way for them to get in, you know, small bursts of sustainable energy, as opposed to having like a heavy meal and then not really having much energy after that.
Yes.
Meaning maybe you know, at a fast food, having a large double something with a large Coke and you know, French fries, and then feeling pretty miserable for a while after that. And it's costly too, so it might be even better to, you know, plan some simple meals or mini meals or snacks ahead of time.
Yeah. I've noticed that when you start doing that, of course, it's a change in your routine. So like, well, I'll do it next week. And then you keep saying that and it never happens. But once you finally do make that shift, it feels empowering. All of a sudden, you mentioned a great point. You're saving money. Like immediately you're saving money. And then secondly, you don't feel so guilty when you're eating and you know you're not eating well and you're not eating healthy. So you feel better physically and you feel empowered because you're taking little steps to control, you know, your health, which is so important. But like you said earlier, we're always focused on other people. So it's so easy to just push that self-care aside and then out of convenience, uh, yeah, the fast food. And before I forget, Laura, thank you so much for writing in your blog the menu items. Like you gave several great examples, and I'm going to include the blog below this so other people can read it and share it. You put a typical menu item from 2 or 3 restaurants that we all go to, and then you showed the calories versus the same restaurant but ordering a little more thoughtfully, and the difference was huge. I had no idea.
I wouldn't either. I think that's the thing, you know, you just, even sometimes when you think you're doing good, it's better just if nowadays we have the information.
Yeah.
So literally we can figure out what exactly we're eating. It's easier, so you don't have to guess. But yes, I was shocked myself when I was looking at some of those things. I don't eat at those places only because I don't find myself needing to, because I'm home or I'm at work. You know, I'm not in the car searching. But I suppose on vacations and things, I may find myself there, and I would be unprepared but when it's something that you're doing a lot, that's when you really want to invest in figuring out, okay, what is the calories? How much fat? How much sugar? Maybe I can make a better choice and I wouldn't even miss out on anything. Yeah, it's just about knowledge is power. So when you find out, what things you could do, and you may actually prefer those items in the long run anyways, the healthier versions.
Yeah. So what you wrote for the options, initially people think, oh, I've got to eat salad every day. That's not happening. But your options weren't order salad at a given restaurant. It was just looking at the menu a little more closely. Honestly, I loved every option that you listed. I thought, yeah, I could do this. Like I would order that alternative meal. And honestly, I wouldn't think anything like I was giving up something for that. It's just knowing what you're consuming, right?
Right. And sometimes, we do things out of habit, not necessarily even because we like it or that we want it. It's just the thing that we do. So when you take the time to kind of relook at menu items and look at the calories and look at the sugar and, you can easily find healthier versions that you may actually prefer to have anyways. So
Yeah. Another note. So I wrote this, and this probably isn't good, but I think it's easier to drink a meal than to eat a meal when we're going call to call to call. So sometimes I will make a protein shake with fruit and vegetables and put that in a glass that won't tip over or it won't spill if it does. And that way I can work on that in between calls without spilling food or trying to eat, you know.
I think I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially if you're getting the fruits and vegetables and then you're getting maybe you're putting some protein, either powder or Greek yogurt or some type of protein, and then maybe adding a little healthy fat, like a tablespoon of peanut butter or almond butter, or trying to complete it to being something satisfying. And I can relate to wanting to drink something on a call where you don't have to touch anything. You might not want to have your hands on, I mean, yeah, we have sanitizer, I'm sure, in the vehicles, but you might not literally want to be hands onto a food, but drinking it may be just easier. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as it's, satisfying. And that might be great for one mini meal or one snack, or, one set time.
Yeah. I like in your article you talked about when to eat. So in the having that routine around a work shift, and that really resonated with me. So those protein shakes are something that I typically make just as I'm walking into work. We have a small kitchen area. I have frozen fruit and vegetables. I have some protein powder and some soy milk. And I blend that all up and put it in a tall glass with a lid on it. And at least I know that first meal,
Yes.
I'm going to get that. I
Yeah.
can't predict the rest of the shift, but I start out that way.
So that's probably a great place for people to start, just trying to make at least their first, whether it's before they get to work or whether it's their first snack or meal or whatever time they're eating during work, trying to include, the fruits and vegetables and the healthier types of foods, because maybe that's the first step, just trying to make that initial, sometimes as the rest of the day goes, it gets worse, but at least you started off with that, initial balanced meal.
Yeah. And something else you mentioned that I've really thought was so interesting is that a lot of times we don't necessarily feel thirsty or feel hungry while our bodies really need that. And
Yes, that's true. Well, thirst definitely. Once you start to feel thirsty, you're probably a little on the dehydrated side. So thirst is not a good measure of if you need to drink something. You definitely want to drink, and if you are feeling thirsty, you probably need to catch up in your fluids.
That's good to know. I know a lot of people who, myself included, don't like drinking water. And so your suggestion earlier about putting something in it, lime or lemon or something, just to give that some flavor. I actually have frozen ice cubes with flavoring that I put in that same container for when it's like 90 degrees out down here.
Yes,
Just to give it something.
I agree. I'm the same way. I don't love to drink water. So I kind of force myself, during the day, but I love my coffee in the morning, but I cut it off at a certain time, and I only allow myself a certain amount. And then I try to drink water. And then usually something like a decaffeinated tea in the evening. But I I try to put things in my water too, just because it is hard to just sip on water.
Yes. Another point you made was not to shop when you're hungry. I laughed at that because, yeah, I'm guilty of that too.
It's a good idea to try to plan ahead if you can. Make sure it's great to go when it's not busy. If you can kind of find a time if you're working off schedules, if you're not going after 5 o'clock on the weekday, where people might be running in after work, or you may have the advantage of going at odd times if you're working long days and then having a day off. But going when it's not busy, planning ahead what you're going to, kind of looking through your ideas for your meals for snacks for the week, and kind of going in with. I also, like to do the buy one get one frees. Try to stock up on those items whenever I use them. But yes, trying not to go when you're hungry, because then you can end up with. Usually, that's when we usually buy things that we want for emotional eating.
Yes.
So we're stocking our carts for, the ice cream and the snacks.
Yes.
Or things that are quick.
We found that using a calendar has been helpful. You schedule everything, right? You write in your calendar a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment. And I've now gotten in the habit of writing the shopping for this week work meals. And so I do that the day before we start our 4-day stretch at work, so that I'm more mindful. I plan out that whole week. And it doesn't always work the way you think it will, but at least it's a good start. And maybe 3 out of those 4 nights, I'll eat what I planned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's better than before, when it was just fast food every meal,
That's fantastic, really. I think the best way to be successful at anything is to pre-plan and to set yourself up for being successful. So really planning today for tomorrow. When it comes to meals, you have to be, unless you want to go to the grocery store on a daily basis, which I hate going to the grocery store, so I do it once a week. So trying to set yourself up, usually Saturday or Sunday, set yourself up for the week. Maybe even package your snacks ahead of time. Maybe pre-cook a meal or two. I always try to cook once and have it at least another time. Don't necessarily want to cook on a daily basis. It could be maybe something put in the freezer, or maybe something I'm just going to have another later in the week.
Yeah.
Just trying to set yourself up so you have the time, and you also have the ingredients that you want.
Yeah. So I like how you said that, Laura. In emergency services, we have, standard operating procedures that are written directives, and that's part of what they call pre-incident planning. And so, to your point, yeah, I mean, we have everything dialed in. If there's an emergency at this building, each truck knows where it's supposed to park. Each team knows what their job is, and having that pre-plan all ahead of time, it ensures your success. And so why not use that same approach to your meal prepping, and like you said, cooking enough for 2 meals so that you don't have to cook again the next night or later in the week. It's game changing, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think even for myself, I schedule in, usually the night before, because I wouldn't get things done if I didn't plan and write it down. So usually the night before, I'm scheduling in when I'm going to work out. I'm scheduling kind of a general idea of my meals. Obviously, the the top 5 things I have to get done during the next day. So in a way, I'm trying to plan ahead so I can be very successful.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I just lost myself there, but I was thinking I write lists and live by lists too. The same thing. Like the first hour of every morning, the top 5, like this has to happen no
Yeah.
matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then towards the bottom of the list are the less important things, but that's how I stay focused on what needs to happen.
Yeah. So just trying to plan ahead. That's it. Otherwise, I wouldn't get anything accomplished. Even on the weekends, I do the same thing because, there's certain things or on my weekends, I should say, on the days that I have off, certain things I need to do. And, grocery shopping is on that list. And then the grocery shopping list is on the list. That's,
Right.
so there's lots of lists. But I guess the overall thought is planning ahead helps for anybody's success.
And that's what we've experienced. We're all being very mindful. One of the people in our unit has been going to yoga religiously for a number of years, and that's so critical to self-care, having those outlets, being able to step away from everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that yoga is wonderful. And I do think, any exercise, of course, in general it's absolute. I think it's mandatory for health, but, it's so important. And it's so important for so many reasons, not just most of the reasons. I'm a very anti-weight dietitian. I don't focus on weight, but I focus on habits and activity, exercise. There's so many benefits outside of weight that are so important. And for stress relief, I think that's probably, stress relief, of course, our cardiovascular health, and maintaining our muscle mass is so important as we get older. That's critical. Yes, but kind of finding time, and that is so important for, for people who are doing the line of work that your staff does. Self-care is so important to make sure they incorporate because, they have so much stress. They want to have the energy, the emotional energy, the physical energy, all of those things. It's so critical that they have it. They really do. It's good to help encourage healthy habits like that.
Yeah. When I think about self-care, I guess it looks different for each person. I was wondering what your routine as far as self-care, what you do, what works for you, and advice you might have for people.
Oh gosh. So, well, pretty much everything we've been talking about, but, for me, my family, my religion, I'd say, I always prioritize everything. As long as my family's good, I've tried to take care of myself too, but, making sure everyone else is good, but I always have to be, getting a good night's sleep. Obviously, I'm a much happier person. My kids think I'm happier if I get a good night's sleep. I think the funny thing is, my kids are night owls. So, they were very quiet during the day, and then I would fall asleep, and all of a sudden they would be like, "Mom, let's do this," and "Mom, let's," and I was the opposite. So I needed my sleep. So I had to, learning to prioritize what you need. I think that's what I'm trying to say in a very long, strange way. I need to have good night's sleep. That's I can't function really well without that. So I'm assuming for, your line of work and staff, that is so difficult to do because of schedules and needing to work nighttime and sleep during the day, or even just trying to get wound down so you can sleep at night. I can imagine that puts a lot of stress on your system to try to get into a good, but I think that's so important to get into a good routine. However, whatever it is for you. For me, I need to, get in bed by 10 o'clock. I need to shut down electronics by 9:30. I need to, I have this routine, because if I don't, I'm wide awake and I can't get to sleep. So sleep, and then of course I always work in exercise. That's something that's been part of my whole life. So usually 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night. That's just because that works for me. It's short times. It gets me waking up in the morning, and then it gets me de-stressed at night. So those are the reasons that I would do it that way. Evenings more usually yoga, walking. Mornings are usually more high intensity activities. And then of course trying to eat mindfully throughout, the day, stay hydrated, using caffeine just first thing in the morning for me. I notice I get jittery with too much. It does not help me feel better after a certain amount of caffeine, but just learning what your limit is. Everyone has different tolerance to stimulants, and I would say the best amount is just enough to get you going that initial time in the morning, whatever your morning is, and then trying to use other things during the day to keep you alert, whether it's maybe taking a brisk walk if you have a 5-minute break. I'm allowed to chew gum. I know that sounds silly, but I can chew gum at work. And sometimes in 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I need to start chewing gum to keep my mind stimulated, because I have a lot of writing to do usually at that time, and that's usually I'm crashing with my energy. So it might be, I usually try to drink some water and then, maybe get some gum. Maybe I do a quick brisk walk around the hospital. Sometimes that just helps me get the last, 2 hours of thought going. And I know self-care looks different for everybody, and I would never tell people that these are the things that you have to do, but I really think learning what you need, really paying attention to how you're feeling, and if something isn't working for you, then that's the message that you might want to try something different. If you're having trouble sleeping at night, look into what, are you drinking caffeine, 3 hours before bed? Is that causing it? Are you having a hard time shutting down your mind? Do you have to have some type of, meditation before you go to sleep? Maybe eating a big meal before bed isn't helping. Maybe having a smaller snack, or a lighter meal. I guess just trying to really stay in touch with how you're feeling.
Yeah, and having those thoughts running where you're able to plan what works for you. It could actually be fun. Like, this doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to be something that feels like a burden. I know, having gone back and forth with this throughout my career, I've kind of dialed in on some things that are critical. Like you mentioned, my routine includes reading. I'll read in bed, and that will be the transition point. So from like 10 o'clock at night, on my days off, I try to be in bed fairly early and just read. And I love what you said earlier too, having just like a small snack versus a big meal. I notice I sleep better if I have maybe some string cheese or some peanuts or just something. Otherwise, I'll wake up at 3 in the morning and I just can't make it through the night without something extra. But I try not to have that be like something unhealthy.
So yeah, that's I have to confess, that's probably when I have my unhealthy thing, that's probably not the best thing. I also believe you have to have, balance, and and maybe I would do more of an 80%, 90% healthy, and allow yourself maybe a little something that you just purely enjoy and is not necessarily the healthiest. But for me, that's about 8 o'clock in the evening. I like to have a bowl of it's yogurt, but it's frozen. It's ice cream, but it's yogurt, but it's ice cream. But really, that helps me stay good, make more good choices during the day. But I do allow myself to have a little something. People that know me well know I still, like to have a little piece of chocolate, or a little, I like a little something sweet. But again, it's in a pre-thought out amount. I do have it because I do really enjoy it. That was the other thing I was thinking for the firehouse culture. It's really got to be a culture of inclusion, with all the different staff members feeling they have their input, and they have their, maybe they can share some recipes. Maybe it's just coming together as a team and starting with one thing like beverages. Maybe 1 month you're just going to try to improve what you're drinking and have those things available. So that's how my mind works. I go all over the place. I went to the firehouse somehow.
Mine does too, Laura. I think we're birds of a feather. I was thinking too, along the same lines, when Carl, the police officer that I work with, his name is Carl, and he and I work very closely together. We go to calls together. We're together for 10 hours at a time, and what we eat has a big influence on each other. And we came, after working together for like a whole year, we sat down and talked about food, and we were both not feeling our healthiest. And we decided that we would just one night a week, kind of throw caution to the wind and go to a restaurant and just relax, get food to go or whatever. And that's been really nice because we still have some balance there. We tend to eat very healthy. When we order our food, we tend to get food that's healthy, but it's outside of the meal prepping, and and we like to support the local restaurants in Athens, which, oh my God, the choices there are endless. They're literally endless. It's just an amazing place to get food.
That's important, and that's part of your it's part of health, well-being, your mental health. It has to be, it has to have fun. You have to have good, balance. You have to have, things that you enjoy as much, and that's so important for a well-balanced health and life. So it's good that that was a great example of how, you do try to, maybe the 80-20 rule, where you try to, majority of the time, you're trying to focus on things that make you feel good, and give you more energy, and more sustained energy. And then maybe, the occasional fun time where you're just social, you're enjoying your time together. That's important.
It is. It is. In your work, Laura, especially with the pandemic, are you seeing any, how is it impacting your work? I guess that's what I'm wondering. What does that look like for you?
Well, I guess it's come, I'm not almost full circle. In the beginning, we weren't sure how to take care of people. You know, it was a very new thing. But we know through so much research that can be done in such a short time, and, you know, having so much access to what people have learned so quickly, I feel like we have learned how to give them the best care possible. So it went from, in the very beginning, being very nervous, not knowing exactly, you know, how is this going to change their metabolism? How is this going to change their appetite? You know, their loss of smell, you know, just different things that we were learning as in real time. You know, you're learning these things in real time and you're not sure, okay, how can we help them? So I feel like, you know, we've come so far, and, you know, now that we are, you know, having obviously luckily, less people, less sick. When they were on ventilators, you know, what type of formulas were going to be best? What was the positioning that was going to be best? You know, they're gradually learning that proning was working better for them, for their lungs. And then how are we going to feed them in that position? You know, so there's a lot of uncertainty, which I hate that. You know, it's so hard you want to make sure you're doing the right thing and the best thing, and just not always having the answers to be able to help them. So my line of work is more, I work in a hospital in critical care. So is a lot of my work would be just trying to keep them alive and well and nourished when they weren't able to eat. And now it's, you know, we've learned a lot more and feel a lot better.
Yeah.
It was a really rough time. You know, when you want to be helpful and take care of people, and then you weren't 100% sure what was going to be best for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't even imagine working in a hospital setting throughout this time, and it being such an anomaly that you don't really have a playbook that
Yes.
dictates exactly what is the best. You like you said, in real time. Yeah.
It's hard for somebody that likes to plan and know exactly what to do, and to plan today for tomorrow. So it doesn't work well. But I know with your staff, that's, you know, that's a challenge on a daily basis. They see things they can never, I'm sure, can't even imagine the things that they have to endure.
One of the things that brings people into my private practice, a lot of it is anxiety, PTSD, and I think you're right. A lot of what first responders see, it's not like you can unsee it. It's there, and you carry that forward for the rest of your life. And the longer you do it, the larger that collection of images becomes. And it's a hard thing, and we're starting to talk more about it, thankfully, you know, and really working on that. But I remember when I first became a firefighter, no one really talked about nutrition. We didn't talk about mental health. And really what I learned was by looking at the other firefighters who had been there longer. And you know, a lot of it is maybe some dark humor, but you have to push through to get ready for the next call.
Right.
You know, and it does become challenging, especially like you said, you don't necessarily know all the pieces. And I'm very much a planner like you, and that was a big life lesson, was putting one foot in front of the other when you really don't know what on earth you're getting into. And
Yes.
yeah.
It's got to be really exceptionally difficult.
Yeah, there's a lot of pain and suffering that I feel like people endure, and my message is that you're not alone. And I feel very honored when somebody does reach out that's usually the hardest thing for somebody to do, especially in that culture. It can be seen as weakness. And yeah, that's something that we're working hard to alleviate, because it takes a lot of courage to say, hey, I'm not well, I need some help here, I don't feel right. And I
I,
would say it's strength to do
yeah.
that.
Oh, definitely. And I do think that the type of people that go into the field of first responders, and they are obviously wanting to help people, and probably putting a lot of other people in front of their own needs. And I'm sure maybe they feel it is a weakness when they can't be that strong armor. But it's actually the opposite. When you actually, when you say you need help, that really is a strength. That's, you are showing that you're self-aware enough to realize that in order to be better, you need to work through something. And that's actually even being more courageous.
Yeah, there's so many people that I encounter who've been doing this for decades, and I think, and we talk about all of that collection of images and memories. It's very common for first responders to avoid certain roads, certain intersections. You know what I mean? They'll take the long way to work to avoid seeing places where something painful, bad memory. So it's nice to unpack that along the way and not wait till you've got
Exactly.
a lot of things accumulated.
And unfortunately, I don't think our bodies can recognize the difference between the stress and emotional stress. And I think the emotional stress that people can be under can cause physical damage over a long period of time. Your body is just under stress. It just recognizes stress. It doesn't realize doesn't need to respond to it.
Right.
So you're having like a chronic internal stress, which is that may have kept people alive 100 years ago or more.
Right.
But today, our bodies don't need to have that adrenaline and that fight or flight, and that chronic emotional stress plays a toll on their overall health. So,
yeah, that's a really good point. A lot of people, myself included, are a little bit hypervigilant.
yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier. I come home, there's nobody I know in this line of work that can just go home and go to bed. Like, you just cannot do that. And I feel like we operate at a certain level of adrenaline, and it's so sustained. It's almost that in and of itself is abnormal. But if you do this long enough, a calm, quiet day, it can feel like that's abnormal.
Right.
You're not used to that. And it really messes you up. You're like, I'm at the beach, I should be so relaxed, but oh my God, you just can't,
Yes, and I think that's something that you can continue to talk about, how important it is to de-stress and to work through that and on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And it almost has to be something you teach yourself, but you need somebody to help you do it,
Right. Yeah.
And realizing how important it is for your overall health to not have that inside stress.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be part of one of the habits that you form, you know, it might be in the evening. You know, I've never been able to pay, I can't sit still long enough to meditate, and my mind wanders. But if I was told that that was critical for my health, I would probably really try to learn. And, you know, just might be something that you do it because you know it's something very important. Your body is under a lot of stress all day long. Some of it's physical, some of it's emotional, mental. You need to turn it off at some point.
Right. It's not sustainable long term.
Causes a lot of damage, inflammation, a lot of, you know, the population that you work with can be at a greater risk of disease just purely because of their job.
Yeah. Yeah. And firefighting, I know in New York, things like cancer, if you, as a firefighter, if you get cancer, it's automatically presumed job related because the statistics are there that support that. You know, it's unfortunately very common. Also heart disease, high blood pressure, all of those things. And it's interesting to me, and I thought about this when I read your article. I often don't think about inflammation because it's something you don't necessarily see. It's going on at a cellular level. But what you tied that back to nutrition, and it was something I'd never once thought about.
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, I think in the line of work of your population, you need to be even more sensitive to habits that you can do to help decrease that problem in your body, because you have so many insults against it.
Yeah.
It's so important. So using nutrition in a good way, meaning you're not restrictive, you're not, you know, on a diet, like don't like diets, but really trying to find what foods work for your body on the cellular level and can enhance your body. So, you know, and it really does come back to so simple. It's so simple. It's just, you know, fruits and vegetables, more plants, you know, trying to get less processed foods, less packaged foods. It's simple stuff, but trying to figure out how to get it into your daily routine. That's the challenge. You know,
Yes.
especially when you're on the run all the time. You know,
Right.
carrying around fruits and vegetables is not easy.
No, it's not. Was there anything, Laura, that we didn't talk about that we should have? Did we miss anything?
And it might be trial and error. You know, you might try things and realize that's not really, doesn't work for you, and you just need to keep trying something else.
Yeah. Something that you said early on that I wanted to circle back to real quick was the idea of not focusing on a number like your weight in the scale. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I know a lot of people who beat themselves up over that number and I can think of people, you know, right now sitting here who took what seemed like really extreme measures or unbalanced diets to achieve that number, but that number isn't necessarily that's not the only measure here, right?
No, no, I don't believe in the number being the issue. A weight on the scale is a number, and I believe, you know, everybody has a weight that their body might naturally go to. But if you're doing on a daily basis, you're having healthy habits, you're active, you're getting good sleep, you're honoring your hunger and fullness cues. That's really important. You really need to get away from the wanting the weight loss, but more really listening to your body and honoring that when you're learning to stop eating when you're comfortable and not full is a big thing.
Yeah.
And the problem with, diets and for weight loss is that they can really be counterproductive. When people can go on a very stringent diet, it can your mind, it makes your mind want food more, and usually you can't stop thinking about food, and at some point you're probably going to overeat, and usually we have what we call it's a weight cycle. It's a weight gain, weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, and that's very unhealthy. So we do want to encourage less focusing on the number on the scale and more about focusing on how you feel and your energy. The numbers that you could look at, maybe if you're a diabetic, looking at your glucose control. If you have high blood pressure, we want that number to improve. But we want you to be at a healthy weight, and everybody's weight is different. It's not really a number. It's just where their body feels best.
Yeah. Thank you. That explains a lot of things. Like people's body shapes are different, right? And so what's healthy on one person is going to look different from person to person.
Everybody has different frame size, and based on your genetics and your so many factors. Really, it's not about shape or size. It's just really about what makes you feel the best and most comfortable. It's unfortunate that that's really one of the reasons I became a dietitian. Started back in my teens. It was back when I was a gymnast, and I was weighed every Friday. And this is kind of how when I started thinking about writing this particular article and needing the energy, it kind of brought me back to that time, because I was going through a time of becoming a woman, 13, 14, 15. So of course my body was changing, but at gymnastics, they wanted you to be this back in the 70s too. So, I'm sure things are different, I hope, today, but, they wanted you to have a gymnast body. So I was, at an advanced level of competition, and they would weigh us every Friday, and I'm the kind of person that I want to please people. I want to make everybody happy. So when I realized I was overweight, even though I was under 100 pounds, I started drastically eating differently, because I didn't know what to do at that age. And but what happened, I did lose weight, but I also, over the next 2 years, I couldn't gain any strength. I wasn't able to get better. All along, I was, every year I would move up and be at a different level, and I was improving and I got stronger. And as soon as they put the weight in the equation, I wasn't eating properly. And I was never able to get better or stronger or do the technical skills that I was supposed to do. So I ended up quitting on my own when I was 15, but realizing how eating and nutrition played such a huge role in my ability to move and think. And I was obsessed with food because I couldn't eat it. So it was kind of a roundabout way of getting into this line of work, but it brought me back when I was writing this article for first responders, because they need to have energy. They need to have the stamina. They're risking their own lives. They don't need to be restricting their food intake, but they need to be eating healthy in a way that's going to give them more sustainable energy. So it's really important.
Thank you for sharing that, Laura.
And I think, you know, I'm still good friends with several of the girls. And, you know, I was probably one of 5 that this happened to, you know, so it's probably a combination of my personality, my wanting to please people and make them happy. And I would just have done anything. And I didn't want to be labeled as bad because I was a certain number. You know, I think that all just kind of triggered that. So again, you know, being that it was how long ago? 1975, you know, that was a long time ago. I don't think it, I'm sure today they probably have sports nutritionists for teams that probably help them and teach them how to eat properly. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm sure have changed.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're able to draw from that experience in your professional life. I think that's beautiful, knowing that when I'm in a counseling session, I draw from personal experiences of firefighter, you know, and that's largely who I'm serving, firefighters, medics, and police. And it's all, you know, we're all like drinking from the same well, so to speak. And I think that is just an incredible way to channel what you experienced into such a positive way of helping people.
Thank you.